National Cabinet has been meeting more regularly over the last month or so to address particularly the issues relating to the rollout of the vaccination program, and it was another very useful meeting today as we received updates not only on the vaccination program, which Professor Kelly will speak more to, but also in addressing the very serious issues regarding the terrible pandemic breakout in India. I was able to advise, as I indicated earlier today in my remarks in Williamtown, that of the National Security Committee decision that was taken yesterday afternoon, where we noted that the biosecurity order and the pause was successfully reducing the caseload and risk regarding arrival of persons from India, that the biosecurity order would remain in place with no change until its intended completion date of May 15, that the repatriation flights, the facilitated commercial flights that we have been running now for a considerable period of time, that assisted some 19,000, just around 20,000 in fact, people to return from India already, that they would resume on the 15th of is scheduled to leave India on the 15th of May. There'll be 3 flights coming in this month into Darwin, and that will be supported by the National Resilience Centre at Howard Springs in Darwin. That is the facility that was recommended to be established by Jane Holton's review into the quarantine system across the country. That now will have a capacity this month of 2,000 persons, up from 850. And that facility has been supported by the Commonwealth Government to the tune of around $500 million. I advise that while the pause in direct flights from India would be further reviewed next week, it was likely that the Commonwealth Government would not be resuming direct commercial flights from India, and instead invited the states and territories to participate in receiving additional repatriation flights, facilitated commercial flights into their states. And I was very pleased to have the initial response straight away from New South Wales as well as Victoria and Queensland, who indicated that they would be responding positively to that invitation. South Australia is also considering it very favourably. They have a flight which is due to come in from Malaysia on the 15th of May, I believe it is, and we anticipate that there will be people on board that flight who will have already been in Malaysia for a period of a week or two, perhaps, and they want to just carefully assess the infection rates that are coming from that flight. But I want to thank South Australia for their consideration. Western Australia will be considering. Of course, into Tasmania, there's not the opportunity for that, nor in the ACT. So I want to thank particularly New South Wales, that previously had been receiving commercial flights, direct commercial flights from India, for their very quick response, together with Victoria and Queensland. So that's doubling the amount of repatriation facilitated commercial flights that we will see this month, from 3 to we anticipate 6, but those details will be confirmed with those states and territories and those arrangements as we work together on that over the course of the next week. Those charter flights will of course be focused on bringing those Australians, citizens, residents and families who have been registered with our High Commission and Consulate officers within India, and it will also be targeting on those 900 most vulnerable of that group. I've asked DFAT to do a review of the registrations of all of those who have been registered in India to ensure that they're current, and that will assist a proper prioritisation of placing people on those flights. The charters will be undertaken by Australian crews, and they will require rapid antigen testing prior to departure. By arranging these returns to Australia through what is it is the most secure channel we can provide for, that will mitigate the risk of potentially higher rates of infections presenting on arrival in Australia, and ensure that the quarantine system will continue to be able to receive continued repatriation flights in the weeks and months ahead. Sensitive third country transit points will also be monitored very closely after the 15th of May for the infection rates of those arriving on flights from those transit points. the arrivals and potential actions that we will undertake to mitigate the risk is particularly in Colombo. We'll be working closely with the Sri Lankan government and the airlines in Sri Lanka to ensure that we're seeking to put in place rapid antigen testing before uplift on any of those flights into Australia. And so we're working closely with them. I spoke with the Foreign Minister last night, and she's already started that process through DFAT to engage with the Sri Lankan government and with the airlines to ensure we can support those flights continuing to come to Australia. I'd also note that we'll be monitoring the flights coming in from other transit points, although in most other cases we are not anticipating, at least our advice is presently, to see significant volumes coming through those other channels. All of this is about sensibly preventing a third wave of COVID-19 here in Australia, doing that responsibly while at the same time doing everything we can to sustainably bring Australians home from what is currently the most significant hotspot for those travelling to Australia of anywhere in the world right now. The biosecurity order is doing its job. It is doing what we intended it to do. It will run for the term that we intended it to run, and then that will be replaced by arrangements beyond that point to ensure that we can prevent a third wave. I want to thank in particular in Australia our Australian community of people who are of Indian descent, the Indian community here in Australia. I want to thank them for their patience. I want to thank them for their understanding. I want to thank them for the opportunity that we've had over the course of the last week and longer to be able to convey directly to them and explain the decisions the government has been taking. And I know that they will be welcoming the fact that these repatriation flights will be returning once again, but also that we believe we'll be able to do that because of the actions we've taken on a sustainable basis. I know also from the Foreign Minister's engagement with her counterpart in India, in London, in the last 24 hours, that Australia's support for India at this time is greatly appreciated. And there was a very positive meeting held between Foreign Minister Jaishankar and Foreign Minister Payne while they were both there for the G7 meetings in London. And in addition to that, I'll be speaking to Prime Minister Modi later today. I know that the support that has already been provided to India directly, whether it's in oxygen concentrators or respirators or PPE equipment and all of these things, has been positively received, and we intend to provide as much further assistance as we possibly can, and I look forward to discussing that with Prime Minister Modi this afternoon. On the vaccination program, I will leave that largely to Professor Kelly to speak of, but I just note a couple of encouraging points there. Some 2.5 million doses have now been delivered, over 80,000 yesterday. More than 10% now of the population aged over 16 has received their first dose, and that's very welcome. We're also making very positive progress with those Australians aged over 70. As you know, on Monday week, GPs will also be involved in vaccinating those over the age of 50 through their clinics. GPs are now accounting for well over half of the vaccinations done in Australia. Our GPs are doing an absolute Herculean job, not just in administering the vaccine, but I think sitting down with Australians, talking them through the vaccine, giving them the assurance and comfort they need in taking that vaccination. And I want to thank all of our GPs. And I particularly want to thank, as we know, there are so many of our GPs out there of Indian heritage. They're doing a fantastic job. People of Indian descent make up a significant proportion of our health community, our health workforce, whether it's with the doctors and the GPs, or they're working across our health system and our aged care system. And I particularly want to thank them. Once again, while they're concerned about what is happening in their home country originally, and the devastation we're seeing there, here they are here in Australia doing a magnificent job as Australians. National Cabinet has been meeting more regularly, particularly to address the vaccination rollout. We agreed today that having stabilised the rollout, we will move now back to our regular cycle of meetings, which is on a monthly basis, and we will do that and convene more regularly as required.